Hey, what's good, everybody? It's me, your hero, Benjamin Banks, and you're listening to a brand new episode of Leveling Up with Benjamin Banks. Joining me, as always, is my co-host from the Leveling Up with Benjamin Banks podcast, Double OT Terrific Trav. Trav, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling gravy. I'm here.
Hey, I am a little bit under the weather, but I am here too, and we have joining us today a very special guest. This is somebody that we met at Superstar Anime this year in Virginia Beach, and that is the awesome professional voice actor, Mr. Michael Haigney. Michael, how are you doing today?
Well, I wouldn't go so far as to say I'm a professional voice actor, but thank you for the introduction. I'm doing okay, Benjamin. Hi, Trav.
I don't know, man. I don't know how many people could do what you're doing.
Exactly, man. Yeah, but yeah. Thank you so much for joining us. And, before we get into today's interview, everybody that's watching, make sure that you like this video, you subscribe to the channel, and you hit that bell button so that way you're always notified when we have new content here on Leveling Up with Benjamin Banks. And if D was here, he always says, podcast link down below in the description. Like, follow, subscribe. And Trav, what is your tip of the day?
Hey, the tip of the day is always be on standby, always be on call, always be ready.
That's right. And that's what we do. So, Mr. Haigney, the first question that I ask each and every guest that we have up here on Leveling Up with Benjamin Banks is, what is your origin story? Every hero or villain has one. So tell everybody who you are.
Well, I was born on a distant planet.
Hey, I love it.
First of all, you can call me Mike. And second of all, my origin story. Well, you mean vis-a-vis Pokemon?
Yes, like before. Yeah. What led to... Who were you before you got into voice acting, and then what led to you becoming in Pokemon?
Well, I was still me as long as I can remember. I guess I got a series of jobs when I was in my last year of college. The first one was as a page at CBS television in New York here. Wow. And that led to some friendships among the pages, and those led to jobs. And eventually it led me to 4Kids. I had worked with the president of 4Kids, Norman Grossfeld, and I had done some adaptations of anime before that. I did the first one I did was called Golf Force, which was a movie. And then we did Slayers, which was an anime series, sort of a sword and sorcery, I guess, kind of thing.
A classic.
Oh, was it really? Okay, well, that's good. I didn't know it at the time.
Slayers is considered a classic for our age group, for sure.
Wow, that's good. I'm glad I didn't know that. I would have been more nervous, I think, if I had known it was going to be a classic. And then I did a series called Here is Greenwood. I like that one. That was a short series about kids in a boarding school. And then a friend of mine with whom I had worked, Norman Grossfeld, called me and said, hey, you do adaptations of series, right? Animated series. And so that's how I got Pokemon.
Love it.
Yeah, nice.
Going back to the CBS stuff and all, are we talking like early 90s, mid-90s? Not to age any of us.
No, you know? Well, you couldn't age me much more. I'd be in the danger zone. No, this is like, let's see, I started at CBS in 1977.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a long time ago, right?
That's crazy.
It was crazy, yeah.
No, that's awesome. And, now I want to ask you, because you've been doing Pokemon for so long. And
well, that's not true. Wait a minute. That's not exactly true.
Oh, it's not?
No,
okay.
No, it's not true. I did the first... I'm doing a podcast series now about the making of the original series, and it's called Original Pokemon, and you can find that wherever podcasts are ignored. And but I only did the first. Let me back up. I'm just going through. It's been such a long time. It's going to be 25 years next year in 2023, I believe, where the American version premiered. And I did the first, I think, couple of hundred shows. I'm not exactly sure when I transitioned over to doing Kirby Right Back at You, but I think it's about 200 shows. And so I was in the early seasons, some people call them the classic seasons, of the Pokemon series. But the show is still going on, so it's had many, many more seasons without me than with me. And that probably works out for everybody. That's up to you to judge.
That's still important though. And but aside from just doing the Pokemon voices and stuff, you were my favorite gym leader, which was always Blaine.
Blaine, yes, I'm now grown into the role because I look like Blaine now.
That is kind of true. I am seeing that.
Yeah, there is a resemblance. I don't know if Blaine was the precursor of me, but yeah, Blaine. People, I've only fairly recently started going to conventions and signing autographs. I mean, I knew that there was, that they had like obviously conventions and stuff, but I really didn't know that there was such a thing that people were coming up and asking for my autograph and everything. So that's relatively new, and that's been a great thing for me anyway. And yeah, so people come up to me and say, "Oh, you were Blaine," and "Oh yeah, that's true. How'd you remember that? I barely did." And it was only one episode, I think.
Right. Yeah. Pretty much that's kind of what it was for most of those gym leaders. Was actually
it was a two-part episode, I believe. Right. I'm not up there yet. What I do on the podcast is I haven't seen the show for 25 years since I did the episodes. Never seen them, and so I go back and then. So I don't like to skip ahead and
right.
Do things like that. But yeah, I believe it was a two-parter, and Blaine reveals himself, I think, in the second part. I hope that's not a spoiler for anyone.
Hey, I spoil stuff all the time, so
you can cut that out.
Yeah. No, I do want to ask Banks, if you don't mind, real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Cutting in here is. Being just a part of that original run of Pokemon, the Kanto region stuff, what, coming into the 4Kids, and 4Kids is no longer a company, I believe, but when you were coming in to do that, what did you even know about this weird thing? Because I know for people now, it's like no big deal, but at the time, we didn't see anything like that here in America, like them bringing up, like Sailor Moon maybe, but like bringing over these shows and card games and stuff like that and trying to turn it into this American hit was a whole new thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're too young to remember, but really the first wave of anime that came over and was televised in the US were shows like Kimba the White Lion, Astro Boy, Gigantor, Towboy the Eighth Man. And so that was like the first wave, and then it kind of died down. That was in the, I guess, mid or early 60s, I guess, mid 60s or so. And they were syndicated all around the country. And then it kind of died down a little bit. I know that there were, I was too old then for, there was this show that, it was like the Power Rangers, but animated, Star something or other, I can't remember. But and then of course Sailor Moon was big, but then Pokemon was much bigger. 4Kids had the license for the merchandise in the U.S. and other territories, I believe, but at least the U.S. and Canada. I think that's correct. And so, like a lot of these properties, the TV show was really, in a sense, a commercial for the game and for the cards. I knew basically the only thing I knew about Pokemon before I began adapting and directing and eventually doing voices in the show was that the show had sent a lot of kids, or a fair amount of kids, to the hospital in Japan because of that Porygon episode where the flashing lights kind of triggered a reaction, and kids had
like an epilepsy attack.
Exactly right. Yeah, wow. I'm not sure if you knew about that. Yeah, that was a big
crazy
deal. Yeah, that was.
I remember hearing about that when I was a kid, because I'm sorry to cut you off, Mike, but I just remember that there was a lot of censorship when Pokemon came over here to the States, and like that was one of the episodes that had to be censored because they were afraid that the same thing would happen to kids over here in the US.
Right, and they didn't show that episode. Some people have asked me, did I do the adaptation of that episode and just not show it? And some people have sworn that there is an English dub of that, but I don't remember that. I've never seen it, so I'm got to say no, that we did not do that. Maybe some other company or some, fan did it or something, but from my recollection, we did not. It's possible that we did, and when I get there, I know, when this podcast comes out, I'm going to get some letters at Original Pokemon saying, no, you're 100% wrong, and you're on it, and you laying the stars in it. It's like, oh yeah, I guess maybe I did. This is a long time ago, and there was these are pretty good pace that we were putting these shows out.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of shows after that, and then a lot of time has elapsed. So I'm always open to correction. But yeah, that was all over the news in the U.S., and that's what people knew about it. And just want to not correct what you said. You're calling it censorship. There were deletions and changes so that there were a lot of when Pikachu would send out his Thunder Shock, particularly. The 4Kids would tamp down that video, so they would slow it down so that the flashes were slower and they were less intense. And you can see that now in the dubs that are on Netflix and even the Pokemon website and other places. So it wasn't technically censorship for content. It was just 4Kids was very and rightly concerned about triggering any kind of negative physical reaction in kids. So that was done all the time that I was there. And my guess is now that the show avoids that kind of visual flashing.
That really just blew my mind a little bit, because I'm just thinking back of when Pikachu would do the electric shocks, and it would kind of be like in a slow motion kind of deal. And like, I just thought that's what it was, I didn't know there was these reasonings for it.
Yeah, because they had done a bunch of the episodes already in Japan, so they weren't keen on reanimating them. So that was done in New York by 4Kids, just as I said, kind of making that video a lot milder so that it wouldn't trigger anything.
The more you know.
Yeah, the more you know. I mean, I feel like it's a history lesson, because you read stuff online, but it's like we're actually getting it from the person that actually did it, And I think that it's really cool to learn the history of Pokemon, because it's like we grew up loving the series. I know Trav, he still watches it with his daughters and whatnot, and whenever the movies come out, like I'll check them out. But did you ever think that Pokemon would become this worldwide phenomenon that it was here in the US? I know it was already big over in Japan and whatnot, but coming over to the US, did you think it was going to be that big?
No, absolutely not. And when I first saw the series, I thought, gee, I don't think this is going to last. It's so much different. And, with the kid and these little animals, and are they really animals or what are they? But, it was a job to do. And, but pretty soon, there was like a lag time of about a year from its popularity in Japan to when it started to really become popular here. But, as I've said in other fora, it was really the last that I can think of. It was the last big show that was on broadcast television. At that time, in the early 90s, cable television, a lot of the kids shows were migrating over to cable television.
Right.
And that was for several different reasons. The stations could make more money with infomercials and other kind of programming. And, they didn't want to get the letters about, Bugs Bunny hitting somebody on the head with a mallet anymore. And so, it was all going over to cable. But Pokemon not only had that syndication, and it was on, then, it was on CW, it was on Fox, what they called the Fox box. But like virtually every kid in America could see that show. Right. So that was really the last ubiquitous hit. I mean, SpongeBob is huge, and there are a lot of other properties that are shows and characters that are big, and Simpsons and everything. But this had not only the show, but it had obviously the video games, which were then just coming up, and the card game, and so, coupled with the broadcast, it was just really had all the makings of a big hit, and it has that special something that still endures. It just really captures the imagination of millions of kids and people who are not kids anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. Trav?
No, just to your testament on saying that, they just celebrated, was it 25 years And
25 years in Japan, yeah. When the game premiered, yeah.
Yeah, so it's just crazy, you know, because they've been putting out all the 25-year card sets and all these different things. McDonald's did like a Happy Meal, which, I mean, we had the Pokemon Happy Meal kids back in '98, you know, when
Right.
Pokemon first came out. And still, I want to say, you know, Pokemon the movie in theaters is still one of the biggest animated films ever.
Yeah, I think it's number one. I think it was
It's
number
not number one anymore.
Yeah,
but it's still in that top
Dragon
10.
Ball Super is number one now, right?
I'm not sure, but I know when it came out, it was a big hit for Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
But you know, there were a lot of promotion too. But it was all these things cross promoting each other. You know, they had several of these little Volkswagen Beetles that were designed to look like Pikachu, you know, the tail and everything. And they went across the country. And then there was a big premiere at Grauman's I guess it was, I don't know if it was Grauman's at that time or Mann's Chinese theater in Hollywood. Then there was one in New York, and it was just, you know, it was on when TV Guide was a big thing. It was on the cover of TV Guide with 4 different characters on there, and 4 different collectible covers, I guess. It was on Time, at least Time, may have been on Newsweek. It was in the New York Times. It was everywhere. It was just ubiquitous. And so really a unique. And I was lucky to be involved with it, and I still am, you know, doing the podcast, Original Pokemon, and also just, you know, meeting hundreds and hundreds of fans at all these conventions where I sign autographs and pop heads and everything.
So something I wanted to piggyback off of what you had just said about the Beetles that look like the Pikachus. I remember when I was a kid, I can't remember what magazine it was, but they, like you said, they were doing the tour and whatnot, and one of the stops was Norfolk, Virginia. And I don't know why. I mean, of course, you know, I'm a little kid. I'm little banked. And my grandma, she just kept on asking me, like, why are you standing outside in the front yard? And I'm just like, because in the magazine they said that the Pikachu car is coming to Norfolk, and little Banks thought that Pikachu car was going to be driving in the neighborhood, and like I was going to get some free Pokemon stuff. And of course, my mom was working. I'm pretty sure if it was anywhere in Norfolk, it was probably in downtown Norfolk or something like that. But I don't know why. Like, I stayed outside all day until it was dark outside, and
the street light came.
Yeah, until the street lights came on, hoping that Pikachu car was going to come in my grandma's neighborhood. And unfortunately, I never saw that car. But it's like when you started,
thanks.
Yeah, when you brought up that story, this is one of the saddest
stories I've ever heard. This is
I'm
like
sorry, it's like it made me
special here. The boy who waited by the window. That's
the boy who waited by
the boy who waited
down. Wow, this is sad.
Oh man, you know.
Well, I'm sorry. You know what? If I had known that you were there, I would have tried to call somebody and
put in the word
and do that. Yeah. This is
Yeah, y'all make sure y'all hit some neighborhoods.
Yeah. Oh my God.
I want to ask your opinion on something.
Okay.
And that being, you know, because you voice so many Pokemon, what do you think it is about Psyduck that is so popular for you as your most popular Pokemon that you did? Because Psyduck's like popularity is like insane for some reason. What do you think that is?
I don't know. I have no idea. I mean, he's kind of the crazy kind of sound, which is unlike a lot of the other ones. You know, there's just sort of animally, more animalistic. You know, I've said before, and now I'll say again, and it's kind of a twist on an old joke. You know, I think there are 3 reasons why Pokemon is popular, but nobody knows what they are. And so that's really my explanation. I don't know. You know, I will say though, I always thought Charmander was, sorry, it's late. Charmander has to sleep once in a while. His flame goes down. But Charmander. But a lot of people like Psyduck. But a lot of people have come up to me for autographs of Snorlax.
Right.
You know, they really love that. It's harder to do, live, but because we used to pitch him down, so he was much more rumbly and deeper. But a lot of people love Snorlax. There's so much, as you know, there's so much merchandise out there. Somebody came to one of the conventions and they brought a Snorlax. I don't even know what you would call it. I guess it's like a beanbag chair. It was almost life-size. I mean, it was a gigantic thing. This guy must have weighed like 100 pounds, huge. And so there's just so many, statues and keychains, and you've seen all the stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's crazy that as many Pokemon as they got, they're almost up to 1,000, even with this new generation coming out. It still seems like that original 151 has the most merchandising still.
You think so?
I believe so, for sure.
I guess, but I don't know, like our Charmander, and I haven't seen the show really since a little bit of time after I went on to the other show, to Kirby. But like, is Charmander and do they still show up in the series, I wonder? I don't know.
Oh no, they do.
Oh, they do.
They do. Even in the new series, the gimmick was Ash went back to Pallet Town.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, so they're kind of going to all these locations to find these other Pokemon, but their main base is now back in Pallet Town, so it's kind of going back to their roots a little bit.
Well, that's safer. I think he was traveling around by himself way too much.
So I know you mentioned Kirby. Is that something where you decided to leave Pokemon and just focus on Kirby, or what happened with all that?
Well, I was working. I was working with a partner, Larry Juris, and we had a little company that did these adaptations. And so the first couple of seasons, I think it's almost 3 seasons. I don't really remember. I have to get to the episodes. As I said in some other interview, I was working next to Kathy Borland, who became the producer of the show. And so when I left, sometimes they would get stuck for a title of a show. And after the first, I don't even know how many yet, because I haven't gotten there. When I first started adapting the show, I thought, I better stick pretty close to a almost straight translation, if there is such a thing, as from the Japanese of the names of the titles. But after a while, I could see that nobody cared, and it was kind of boring. So I would put a lot of puns in there. And so once in a while, when they would get stuck, I was like the punster. So I would watch some episodes that I hadn't worked on to try to come up, or I would ask, what's it about and what Pokemon on, would try to. So the reason I'm saying this is I've looked at a list of episodes, and some titles seem familiar, but they may not have been shows that I worked on. So I'm not exactly sure. And now that I've said all this, I completely forgot the question that you asked.
Sometimes we snowball. That's why.
About Kirby. Oh yeah, I know what happened. Well, what happened was then Norman Grossfeld, who was the president of 4Kids, wanted to bring all the production for the shows in-house. Pokemon was popular, and then they had Yu-Gi-Oh, and then it started to kind of snowball there. And so I went to work for 4Kids, and Pokemon was pretty well established. We had all the actors and some directors who then took over from me when I was concentrating on writing the shows. They had people who would direct, and then the regular actors. Kathy had been working on the show, and so I segued to they wanted me to go and work on the new show and do the adaptation for Kirby.
Gotcha. So then what brings you back to the franchise all those years later? You come back in, you're doing Snorlax for some of the video games and Super Smash Brothers and stuff like that.
That's, to my knowledge, I don't know if that's true or not. I don't get paid for it. They may be using my voice. Okay. I've heard that they are, but I have no idea. I haven't done a voice for Pokemon in maybe 23 years, 22 years, something like that. But people have told me that it's on, video games that are more recent, but I don't know. I have no idea.
And that's the thing about credits, though, because sometimes you don't know if people are credited properly. So
you know what the thing is with the TV show, they ganged credits. Instead of doing credits for each individual show, they did like it by the season or group of shows. So I'm looking at a lot of, I'm looking at credits where they have several directors and several writers. Well, I know there were only myself and like say Jim Malone who directed, who took over from me.
Right.
And maybe they have like 6 writers and I'm included there, but some of those writers only did 1 episode, and that their name may be on 10 or 15 shows, but they never even saw those other shows. You know what I mean?
Right.
That was to kind of save money, so they didn't want to have individual credits for each show and have to change them every time.
So, Mike, something I wanted to ask you is, you've been to so many cons over the years, and I was actually one of the hosts at Superstar Anime with you and Tara Sands, and one of the coolest moments at that panel was when the little boy had walked up to the mic and he asked, so did a guy just walk up to you and say, hey, do you want to be a voice actor? And I remember the room, they lost it when that happened. So, I want to ask, like, what have been some of your favorite con moments from over the years?
Well, again, I only started doing the conventions late last year, like October or November of last year. And so I was in Las Vegas, I was in Plano near Dallas, Virginia Beach. There's always one I forget. I just was in a big one in Pasadena, and I am going to be at New York Comic Con, which is nice. a big deal. Yeah, so I'm going to be there at the $7 a pop booth several days. So mostly in the morning or early afternoon. They have a whole rotating schedule, which is big because that's a huge convention, as you know. But I haven't gone to that many conventions. As I said, I knew there were conventions. I was vaguely aware that Pokemon people, actors went, but I didn't, and then Tara Sands, who did the voice of Bulbasaur and a whole other, a lot of voices on different shows, contacted me to sign some cards as a set of the Bulbasaur, Squirtle, and Charmander, the starter sets. And then, she put me onto her agent, and that's how I started doing them. But how did I get into the voices? When we first started the show, I knew there were 150 or 151 Pokemon. I knew that much. But when I started adapting the scripts, I thought, well, okay, Pikachu, I can see obviously is going to be with Ash all or most of the time. And but here's an Rattata. Okay, you know what? I have a little time before the next actor come in. I'll just jump in the booth and do that. Rattata. I can do it. I can imitate the Japanese sound and do it with the English name. But then, it started like, oh, Charmander's in. Oh, and Charmander's in it again. Oh, Charmander's in a lot. And then it started to increase the number. But I kept doing. Here's Snorlax, and Snorlax in a couple. Some were one-offs, but there were a number that continued, like Psyduck, and so that's how that happened. Like there would be a few minutes at the end of a session, and I would just fill in the reacts when I had time around scheduling the actors. So that's how I did it. So that's why when people ask me like how advice for how do I get into voice acting. My only advice is if you want to do it the way I did, just become the director of the show and cast yourself. But not that many people have that opportunity. So then when people ask for advice, I say, I cannot give advice because I'll just be doing, telling you to try what I did, but it's a different time, it's a different, market and different people. And it's done, totally different ways now. So I don't really have any valid advice, I don't think.
Trav,
that leads me to ask you then, between that gap, maybe other people don't know kind of what you've been doing, since Pokemon. So what have you been doing? As far as I know, you write a lot of scripts.
Well, I did. Now I'm sort of like, I'm an old geezer now. So I do stuff like, get the mail and check to see if the mail came in, and then go out and say, oh, I already got the mail. A lot of that kind of thing during the day. And, but no, so what happened was I went from doing Pokemon to, then I did Kirby, right back at you, then Sonic X, Then there was short series. I don't think we even completed that. I've been getting some questions about a series called F-Zero, which we adapted, wasn't successful. Then we did an original series for 3 seasons, which was, I was about to say something which everybody says. It was a lot of fun. I don't know if it was fun or not. I mean, I'm glad I did it, but at the time it was a lot of work, and it was called Chaotic, and it was based on these characters that this Scandinavian artist, who was a very nice guy and very talented. I don't think he liked me. I don't think he liked what we did to the series. I don't blame him, or what we did to his characters. We kind of had to, make it for TV and change it. Martin Rolfe was his name. He was a good guy. I liked him, but I don't think it was reciprocated. So, and Chaotic, so that we did, and that ran for 3 seasons. And then I did a show, which I adapted a show, which I really liked, which was called Tai Chi Chasers. Somebody just sent me something that it's now available on Amazon Prime, I think, or I can't remember. But they canceled it right as it was getting to the next. It was going to resolve, and I thought I liked the characters, so I kind of ended on a high note. There were some series that I adapted. It's like anything, you like some more than others.
Right.
And then after that, there was a whole lot of stuff going on at 4Kids, and between Yu-Gi-Oh! and Konami and all kinds of stuff going on, lots of legal stuff. You can read about that yourself if you're so inclined. And then the company kind of split apart. And I was the creative director, which was kind of an overblown thing. I would deal with promotions and promos for the show and on-air promos for all the shows. And then that ended, and then for a few years, I did adaptations of Yu-Gi-Oh! And then that ended. They wanted to get somebody else, and they did. And that's it. That was it for me. But that was great. I mean, I had a lot of good years for somebody who was in television. I worked in television almost consistently from, well, if you want to call it paid job, it was a part-time job, but it was consistent. It was 1977 up through 12 or something like that. Wow. So that was a pretty good run. It was longer than Hello Dolly. So that's, yeah.
All right. So,
and now you got a career in comedy, So.
I wouldn't go that far. But now the thing that's been so much fun, because, when we were doing the show, I guess a lot of the fan mail, because people actually wrote letters then, would go to the stations or go to, I guess, Nintendo. I didn't ever see very much. I saw some very nice things. People would send drawings and, suggestions for the show and everything. But now, so many years later, when I thought this was ancient history of my life, I get to these conventions and these, and even online there, we have these talks and people send their stuff in and I sign them. And it's been really great because people are so super nice at these conventions. And I'm sure you both know. I mean, and they just come up and they say, "Oh, you're such a part of our childhood. Thank you." And they come up. A lot of people have tattoos of the different characters. And I was just purely lucky enough in this context to have voiced a lot of the critters, as I call it, a lot of the Pokemon. And so there's a lot of figurines and pop heads and stuff. And it's just totally surprising, never expected it. And it's been great. And I've been, seeing different cities around the country, and it's really been great. So I have no complaints.
And that's awesome to hear. So Mike, we're here at the end of the interview, and D, that's usually here with us, he has his final wrap-up questions that he always asks. And, me and Trav will tag team and do them together. So the first question is, what is one of your favorite 80s, 90s movie, or both?
Oh my gosh, 80s, 90s movie, or both? Well, I would have to say the first Pokemon movie. That was exciting, right? I have to say that. Gosh, 80s or 90s movie let's see. I just saw that they're having Halloween Ends, which I don't believe. But was Halloween? No, Halloween was back in the 70s, right?
You could go to 70s if you like. That's fine.
Oh gosh. Oh man, during the '90s, I didn't go much because I was working, not around the clock. I don't, it wasn't like that, but day and night. I don't know. I have no idea. The '90s. What if I had a like the list of the top '90s movies? I could probably, do that. But I'm drawing a blank.
And then there we go. Halloween. We all know Halloween is not ending, So
yeah, exactly. We know it's not coming to an
end. I don't know. I just saw the ad the other day.
Yeah, look, they say it's ending, and then 20 years later, there's gonna be like Michael's back, like he survived somehow. And...
I worked on a show called the Horror Hall of Fame. We produced 3 of them. There were 3 2-hour specials around Halloween. I think the first one was '89.
Wow.
And we went, and we had Robert Englund was the host.
Wow.
And we had a whole bunch of people from the heart. Vincent Price, and we had Alfred Hitchcock's daughter, and Bela Lugosi's son. A lot of people had died by that point, and Janet Leigh, and Tony Perkins, and we had Chucky, and the Crypt Keeper was the co-host, and those movies were a lot of fun. I'm just looking down a list of the top movies from the '90s. People like Titanic. I liked the first 4 or 5 hours, but I wasn't bowled over by that. I'm just looking at it through here. I don't like any of the Fargo. It was okay, I guess. Didn't see it. Oh, Casino was kind of good. I've seen Casino several times, but never, like front to
all
back.
The way through.
It's like always on AMC, and they have twice as many commercials as they have, So, what was that movie? What was the movie that? What's his name? The guy who used to live with. Oh gosh, it was about the script writer in Hollywood, and Martin Short played his agent. What the heck was that? That was in the '90s.
No, it's not Get Shorty.
No. It's called I forget. That was a good one.
Ringing a bell to me.
No,
I'm about to look it up.
Oh gosh. Anyway, yeah, I'm looking at all these movies, and I either didn't see them or I didn't. Next to it. Anyway, I'm sorry, guy. I didn't perform for you here. Oh, you know what was good? Misery. I thought that's 1990.
I thought you were talking about Misery, but then when she said Martin Short, I was like, okay.
You know what another movie that I like that I'm seeing that What's Eating Gilbert Grape? I thought that's an underrated.
That's a good
I
movie.
thought that's great.
And that was a good movie.
Yeah, that's good. I've seen Reservoir Dogs. I usually don't like musicals, but that's nice too. That was a joke. Let's see what else. Yeah, that's all I got for you, I think.
Okay. All right, cool. And Trav, go ahead and take it away with the next one.
And this is the final question here, kind of keeping it on the, I don't know, the spookiness, I guess, of some of the other ones you brought up with Halloween is, growing up, did you ever have anything that kind of like scared you, spooked you, and stuck with you? Maybe a folk tale, or maybe you grew up in a haunted house, or grandma had weird China dolls?
My family thinks that I'm haunting this house, I think, sometimes. So I don't know if that counts. But no, I'll tell you 2 things jumped right to mind. When I was very young, and my mom was a very, pretty straight ahead person, but she would take us sometimes to movies that now in retrospect, I think, what was she thinking there? But anyway, the Diker Theater on 86th Street and 5th Avenue in Brooklyn, New York. We went, and there was a movie called Black Sabbath. Have you ever heard of that movie, Black Sabbath?
Yep.
Mario Bava, who's a pretty well-known Italian director of these, I guess they became eventually giallo movies, but this wasn't slashy particularly. It was a 3-part movie, 3 little stories, like an anthology, and Boris Karloff was the host. And way back then, now I'm sounding like in those days, I hate when old guys say that. Well, in my day, but at that time, they had what they called continuous showings, which were, now you go into the movie, there's a half an hour of commercials and coming attractions, then the movie's on, then it stops, and they clear out for half an hour, 20 minutes, whatever, and then they start all over again. But at that time, they would just have continuous showings. So we'd back to back, they would show some trailers, but then the movie would start up right again. So people would go in And, if the movie started at 2:00, they'd go in 2:15, 2:20, 2:45. They'd see the movie. They'd wait till it came around again. They'd leave when they came in. Like, that's where the expression, "this is where I came in," comes from. So anyway, she took my brother and I to this movie. It was a big theater, and the movie was Black Sabbath. And I remember we were coming down the aisle, and as we were doing it, there's a scene in this movie in which a grandmother, this woman, dies, and you come and you see this kind of, they do this, like, I don't know if it was like a tracking shot, but also she was tracking towards you. It was like this and this thing in a huge theater with a huge screen, and this lady with these eyes coming at you. That was, it still creeps me out now thinking about it. And the other thing I mentioned before, Astro Boy used to creep me out. Because
that's interesting.
Still a little creepy.
It's, because we were used to, like, well, now I'm thinking it doesn't look that different from Felix the Cat with the big eyes. But there was something, the way they used to talk, and "Hey, Speed, let's go down there and see what Racer X is gonna," it was I knew as a kid that there was something strange about this, and that was, if not creepy and unsettling. So those are the two things. Haunted houses, no, and that's the only, those two could be, as far as entertainment is concerned.
I love that. Great answer.
Love that too. Yeah. So I mean, now I just want to say thank you, Mike, for joining us. We're here at the end of the interview.
Oh, it's been great. It was really great meeting you down in Virginia Beach.
It was nice meeting you too. And something that we do for all of our guests up here on the podcast is the next time you come to the area, dinner is on us. So
that's great. That's great.
We'll take you to a nice restaurant. We Ken Forey, he came down here and he wanted to get some soul food, and we went to 2 different spots, but he was able to get his soul food. So
I hope you didn't have to pay twice.
No, we didn't.
Good. What a relief. I got scared there for a second.
So before we let you go, let everybody in social media land know where they can find you.
Oh, that's good. Well, I'm not going to give out my address, but I'll give out my digital address. And again, thank you so much for having me on. It's really a pleasure. And I want to thank all the Pokemon fans who, from Virginia Beach, but from everywhere that have come out. They've really been super great. And I'm very grateful. Thank you very much for all the nice things. And I'm also grateful for the criticisms too, because those are all valid as well. But anyway, you can find me. My new podcast is Original Pokeman. That's with an M-A-N. And you can write to me. It's anywhere that you get podcasts. And you can also email me at originalpokeman, all one word with an M-A-N there, @gmail.com. Thanks so much.
All right, and Trav, where can they find you at in social media land?
That's right. You can find your boy on the Instagram at ZK Audio, where I'm also on the Twitter at TravIosZK, where I'm also on the Letterboxd, ranking and rating my daily movie watches. And D sound like he need another hero. So where can they find D, and where can they find the world's #1 hero at?
Hey, you can find Rebellious D at rebellious__D23 at Instagram.com, as he likes to say. And then you can find me, your hero, Benjamin Banks, at KingBenji_Banks on Twitter and Instagram. You can find me on Facebook at Benjamin Banks. I should be the first person to pop up. If not, then I need to contact Mr. Zuckerberg. Thank you again for watching this interview. Michael, thank you again for joining us. Y'all make sure that y'all follow Michael on all of his social media accounts that he gave, and make sure that you support his podcast as well. And with that being said, keep that pinky up, stay positive. We'll see you next time on Leveling Up with Benjamin Banks. Peace.
Thanks again, everybody, for watching another episode of Leveling Up with Benjamin Banks. Make sure you like, follow, subscribe to the channel. Podcast, we got that too. Make sure you give us a thumbs up and hit that bell for further episodes and notifications. Thanks a lot to our patrons. And if you don't mind, join the Patreon. We'll be having new specials coming up soon.